Good evening. These are the news headlines for today. NATO General Secretary Manfred Werner finished his visit to the CIS. The archives of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union are accessible beginning today. The date for withdrawing Russian forces from Lithuania has been changed. The first group of UN forces is preparing to go to Yugoslavia. NATO General Secretary Manfred Werner had a busy schedule today, as much so as in the last 2 days. Observers note that he not only emphasized the new character in relations between NATO and the members of the Commonwealth of Independent States, but also insisted on a reorganization of the armed forces of the former Soviet Union. Our correspondent has the details. Today, Manfred Werner met with the President of the Russian Federation, Boris Yeltsin, and the parliamentary speaker, Ruslan Khasbulatov. Although no details were reported to the press on the negotiations, we can surmise that each side exchanged opinions on the interactions between Russia and the North Atlantic Alliance, the fate of the CIS armed forces, and measures to control nuclear weapons in the former Soviet Union, but also prospects for ratification by the Commonwealth states of the agreement to reduce conventional weapons. This problem is of great concern to Western experts. The agreement was signed in 1990 in the conditions of competition between two blocs. At that time, the armed forces of the USSR were not divided by Republican boundaries. If now the Commonwealth heads of state cannot resolve their differences on military issues in a short time, the treaty's implementation will become problematic. A stable European peace could be deprived of its foundation. The General Secretary left Moscow meetings full of optimism. We have opened a new chapter in relations between Russia and the Northern Atlantic Alliance, he declared at the end of the negotiations. We fully trust the newly democratic Russia and its leadership. Only together, he emphasized, can we build a new Northern Atlantic community. To what extent the optimism of the General Secretary is justified will be shown by the negotiations on military issues between Commonwealth heads of states in Kiev. The Republic's representatives will inform the leadership of NATO on the results of this meeting. The working rhythm of the NATO General Secretary and his smiles prove once again that Western diplomacy is working at as rapid a pace as it has operated since the end of World War II. We remember the remark by James Baker that the collapse of the Soviet Union presents an opportunity which comes only once in 100 years. The new geopolitical situation is being recognized by both Western and Eastern diplomats more quickly than by us ourselves. As was supposed, Iran is beginning increased diplomatic activity. The foreign minister of that country is going to Azerbaijan and Armenia to make compromise proposals. He was in Baku for a meeting today. The meeting between the Iranian foreign minister and Ayaz Mutalibov, president of Azerbaijan, lasted over 2 hours today, and although the meeting was held behind closed doors, journalists learned that the Azerbaijani leader was shown a package of proposals to resolve the Karabakh conflict developed by neighboring Iran. The guest then heard the positions of the Azerbaijani leadership. Answering questions of journalists, the foreign minister emphasized that Karabakh is a problem which should be solved only by peaceful means. Iran has offered to play a mediation role to stop the bloody war. He categorically denied rumors in the Western and Russian media that Iranian citizens are participating in the fighting on the side of Azerbaijan. The foreign minister will meet with representatives of both sides in the conflict zone and then will visit Yerevan. At least 4 people have been killed and 10 wounded in today's firing on Stepanakert Khankendi from Grad rocket launchers. As the correspondent of Itar TASS reports, this morning from the direction of the Azerbaijani village Kisalar, over 50 rockets were launched toward Stepanakert. Stepanakert is also coming under artillery shelling, as is the 366th Motor Rifle Unit situated there. There are new casualties among military personnel. Whether this unit will be redeployed out of Nagorno-Karabakh is still unclear, but the situation remains very severe and requires action. These states, formerly united by a commonwealth, are methodically destroying each other. And other CIS members, preoccupied by their own economic crises, are calmly watching the battle from the sidelines without taking any action to bring peace. The recent meetings in Moscow between the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan with Russian mediation have produced no results. Marshal Shapashnikov is also at a dead end. The 366th Motor Rifle Unit under his command has come under Azerbaijani rocket fire. Soldiers and officers are dying, even though they are not participating in the fighting. The military unit is surrounded. There is no chance to evacuate the wounded or bring in food. Most of these military personnel of this unit are boys from Russia. The indeterminate status of CIS forces is preventing Shapashnikov from taking decisive action, either actively defending themselves or removing the unit from Russia. According to some reports, the total firepower in the region is about 10 megatons. The political pressure, which has always come onto the top brass in the military, has now reached the lower ranks as well. The Itar-Tas news agency reports that the soldiers of the 366th have openly expressed their dissatisfaction with their commanders who have been observing neutrality in the conflict. As a result, the commanders of the Transcaucasian Military District issued an order allowing them to suppress sources of fire on both sides. The dialogue between politicians and military men is taking on the character of a conversation between blind men and deaf men, and there are still 3 weeks to go till the meeting in Kiev. Will the bitter experience of Karabakh spread to other hotspots in the CIS? This possibility has not been officially dismissed. Whose internal affair is it in Nagorno-Karabakh? Azerbaijan's or the CIS as a whole? Armed forces are in a very difficult time because of the political decisions and also because of their living conditions. Today, the withdrawal of Soviet forces from Lithuania was to begin. This morning, Itar-Tas reported that it had begun, but our correspondent learned in the afternoon that things are a little different. This is the first time that journalists have been allowed to visit and photograph freely a military base like this, but this column of vehicles did not move. There's nothing happening here. This day was held, this event, only for the benefit of journalists. Local officials examined the base to determine its ecological and sanitary conditions, but the question was raised why to put on this show here today. There is only one division consisting of less than 100 people planning to leave from this base. The order to march did not come today. It was postponed until the 27th. According to information from other sources, the withdrawal will begin March 3rd. In the Russian Federation Ministry of Security, there's a meeting beginning between the leaders of regional security services to discuss their professional issues of counter-espionage, the fight against corruption, contraband, and economic crimes, and the creation of a new state institute, which will become the new Russian Ministry of Security. February 25th. Today's date returns us to history. If everything had stopped and been completed by the February Revolution, how would we be living today? Many people are arguing about this today, but the revolution did not stop in February, and we now have what we have, and we're opening the archives of the Communist Party. They say this is the first precedent when archives of this type are being opened from 1954 all the way up to 1991. But it's not cause for total happiness. Only 1/3 of all the party documents are being released, that is, of the total of 30 million party documents. The international department's documents, which contain information about the financial support by the glorious CPSU of fraternal communist parties, will still be closed. But the secrecy here will have to be justified. Beginning March 2nd, we are promised that any citizen, including citizens from outside the CIS, who arrive with a letter of recommendation and something to satisfy the security guard at the door, will be allowed to peruse the documents here in the reading hall. And there are many interesting things. The director of this center, the senior archivist Roman Usikov, is not ebullient, however. I'm amazed at the high level of detail. We can find any information here. Included in the archives are over 1 million personal appeals to the leadership, including an appeal by the singer Vysotsky to participate in concerts, requests to be buried in certain cemeteries, and reports of the events of the Baltics in 1991, which were not analyzed at all by anyone. In terms of more recent events, no paper trail was left by the preparations for the coup d'etat. The finances of the party are being examined by a special committee.